Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today is December 17th, 2022. The title of this teaching is called The Mystery Behind the Insurrection at the Capitol Dome. Now, what I would like to show you in this article is that there was an insurrection of a false Messiah on January 6, 2021 at the Capitol Dome. It's otherwise known as the womb of Isis. You know, in the occult world, they consider the Capitol Dome to be the womb of Isis. I'm going to explain that more. Now, I realize that, you know, the Democrats are falsely accusing Trump of insurrection. So it wasn't like, you know, a real insurrection, but there was something spiritual going on, and I'm going to explain. So what is an insurrection? Here's what the dictionary says. An act or instance of rising in revolt, rebellion, or resistance against civil authority or an established government. So I'm going to go back to a couple weeks leading up to the January 6, 2021 events. So on the winter solstice of December 21st, 2020, this is when President Trump first announced the V, aka poisonous bow and arrows, were going to be rolled out to the nation and to the world. He also tweeted that day, he was calling it a great Christmas miracle. He was citing that nobody thought it could be done, but his miracle injection was historical, that no other leader in history had ever accomplished such an amazing feat. And, you know, there you have the news headline, called it a great Christmas miracle. So the fact that this was done on the winter solstice, you know, December 21st, 2020 was when it was rolled out, was deliberate. It perfectly aligns with an ancient occult ritual that has been done since the days of the Tower of Babel, when infants were offered up on the altar to Moloch. The winter solstice is on December 21st, 2020. That same day, he was voted by the Gallup poll the most admired man. And this is interesting because in Revelation 13, it says that the entire world wandered after the beast. Okay. If you look up that word wandered in Greek, it means to be admired. Okay. We are told that the beast shall perform lying signs and wonders, and he will be healed from a deadly wound. If you look up that word wound, it's plague. It's literally the word plague in Greek, which means a plague. Now, you'll remember in October 2020, Trump and his family supposedly contracted the deadly CV, for which they all recovered quickly. Okay. So he recovered from a deadly wound, right? Deadly plague. Why was December 21st, 2020 significant in history? Well, for starters, there was an announcement made in the news media that an astronomical sign was taking place in the heavens. The secular news media were calling it the Star of Bethlehem, because that day there was a conjunction taking place between Jupiter and Saturn. However, what the secular media did not realize is that the true and the genuine Messiah named Yahushua, who many call Jesus, was born under a different conjunction. It was the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus, not the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Now, back in 2002, following the events of 9/11, 2001, I began researching the birth of Messiah. And the first thing I did was I read this book by Dr. Ernest L. Martin entitled The Star That Astonished the World. And I was absolutely blown away by this book. But I didn't take only his word for it. I continued to do further study and research for a few more years. And after several years of doing my own study, I realized that everything he said in this book was 100% correct and accurate about when our Messiah was born. He uses the astronomical record that took place on September the 11th in 3 BC. Now, our Messiah's birth does not always fall on September the 11th. So whatever you do, don't go out and celebrate September the 11th as Messiah's date of birth. His birth falls on the Feast of Trumpets. And the Feast of Trumpets does not always land on September the 11th because the Hebrew calendar goes by a lunar cycle. The Gregorian calendar goes by a solar cycle. So our Messiah was born on the Feast of Trumpets. And the night that he was born, Revelation 12, 1 through 5, we saw a constellation that night. The sign in the heavens was the Virgin. She was giving birth to the Lion of Judah. Inside that constellation, there was a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter. Okay. And the ancient Hebrews called the planet Venus the king, Hazadik. They called the planet Jupiter the righteous. So Venus is called Hamalek, the king. Jupiter is called Hazadik, the righteous. So those two planets in conjunction, which is on the cover of this book, represent the king of righteousness, Melchizedek. Okay. Now, on December 21st, 2020, we also saw on the same day that he rolled out the V, on the same day that he was announced as the most admired man, we saw a conjunction of Sagittarius and Capricorn. Now, I just want to put a disclaimer out here because some people might go, oh, she's following astrology. Look, we're not supposed to use astrology for personal forecasting, like fortune telling, right? But Yahuwah made the constellations. Originally, even in the book of Job, it's called the Mazarot. The constellations are to be used for telling the gospel message. They're not to be used for your personal love life or, you're going to meet a guy this month, you're going to start a new romantic relationship. You know how in, the zodiac and astrology, people use it for their own personal benefit. Like, oh yeah, under my astrological sign this month, it says I'm going to find a new love, or I'm going to find, I'm going to get a raise at my job. That's all BS. Okay. We're not supposed to do that. In Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 18. Here it is. It says right here in Deuteronomy 18, it says, there shall not be found among you anyone that makes his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. So an observer of times, when we look at that in the Hebrew, it means practicer of magic, enchanter, soothsayer, sorcerer. So consulting your astrological forecast using the zodiac signs, that's an abomination before Yahuwah.
It's not to be confused with using the heavens for times and for seasons.
Right. So, divination means, witchcraft, oracle. But, in Genesis, we are told that we are to consult the sun, the moon, and the stars for times and for seasons. So right here, it says that Yahuwah has given us lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was. So, and then in Job 38, he talks about the Mazarot. The Mazarot is the constellations, and that the constellations are given to us for deciphering the gospel. Can you bring forth the Mazarot? You look up the word Mazarot, it says here, zodiac, okay, constellations. So it has its proper place. We're just not supposed to be using it for our own personal forecasting, right? So I just want to put that out there because some people would say, oh, you're using astrology. No, I'm not forecasting my own personal future. No, this is all about recognizing the times. That's what it's for times and for seasons. December 21st, 2020 was also the same day that the conjunction of Sagittarius and Capricorn. Sagittarius is the planet Jupiter. The planet Jupiter presides in the month of Sagittarius, and planet Saturn presides in the month of Capricorn. This took place, giving us a huge sign about an Antichrist leader called the Little Horn in the book of Daniel. I believe this astronomical sign was telling us who the prophesied false Messiah is. Now, you will notice from this graphic that the sign of Sagittarius looks like the rider on the white horse from Revelation 6:2. He's getting ready to shoot with a poisonous bow and arrow. This was confirmation of what was shown to me exactly 9 months earlier on March 21st, 2020. On that date, I heard the voice of my shepherd tell me to read Revelation 6:2 with new understanding and to look up the meaning of the words corona and virus. So back on March 21st, 2020, as I read Revelation 6:2, I looked up the word bow, and I discovered the etymology of this word means a bow and arrow in which poisons are dipped. At that moment, I heard the voice of Yah say to me, the rider on the white horse is President Trump. He will develop the V that will kill 1/4 of the world's population. And as I continued reading, I arrived at Revelation 6:8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. So I was stunned, because up until this point, I was clueless about what was going on with the scam-demic. But Yahuwah spoke to me, kind of woke me up, threw a bucket of cold water in my face, and said, wake up. Okay. Now, I found out after he showed this to me that 4 years earlier, there had been a parade in Augusta County, Georgia, featuring Trump riding on a white horse. And I was like, really? That's amazing. I didn't even know about this. But that was another confirmation. Now, the sign of Capricorn, Saturn, was part of the Great Conjunction. They called it the Great Conjunction of 2020. And you'll notice that the cycle of Sagittarius started November 22nd and it ended on the 21st. December 21st was when the V was rolled out. It's the same day that Trump was voted the most admired man. All the world wondered after the beast. And it's also the same date as this conjunction. The timing of it is pretty amazing. The last date of the Capricorn, the goat, was on January 19th. You know, his last day in office was January 19th. Okay, so the sign of Capricorn Saturn in the Great Conjunction of 2020 ended on January 19th, 2021. This was Trump's last day in office as president before Biden stepped in. Capricorn is the constellation of Saturn, which was anciently celebrated in Rome as Saturnalia, from where the modern holiday of Christmas comes from. The Romans believed that Saturn was the pagan sun god who was reincarnated each year at the winter solstice. Saturn is also worshipped in Freemasonry as Baphomet, the two-horned goat. Now, the sign of Capricorn is, I believe, a fulfillment of Daniel 8:5-8, which is the he-goat. You know, it talks about a he-goat, which in ancient times was Alexander the Great, who conquered the ram, the two-horned ram. The angel told Daniel the two-horned ram represented Media and Persia. Now, in modern times, Media and Persia is Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So, in modern times, Trump is the he-goat, I believe. He's a type of Alexander the Great. And I believe that Trump was like Alexander the Great, who conquered Media and Persia. The same territories, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. These are the same nations that were included in the Abraham Accords. This was a fulfillment of Daniel 7:24, which says that the little horn shall subdue 3 kings. Now you can see Trump's here and he's signing the Abraham Accords with 3 other nations. Those 3 nations are Bahrain, Israel, and United Arab Emirates. The Abraham Accords coin, you can see if you look closely, pictures of syringes. You can see satellite technology, surveillance. You can see Space Force, a rocket ship. You can see a dove with an olive branch in its beak representing peace. And what do you see? The planet Saturn. Saturn. Okay, Saturn is part of the Great Conjunction that we saw on December 21st, even though the Abraham Accords were signed on September the 15th earlier that year. Okay. And then this is the, the scimitar, the Arabian scimitar, which is a symbol of war. You see a satellite dish here. You see a heart monitor. You see computer ASCII code. I mean, it's all here. It's all telling the story of what this agreement is all about. There was even a clause in the agreement that states that these three nations were expected to cooperate with the development and the distribution of the poison. And that was also fulfillment of Daniel 8:25 that says that he destroys many by peace. Okay, the little horn destroys many by peace. Now, earlier that year, January of 2020, Trump ordered the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Okay, by September 15, 2020, Trump signed the Abraham Accords with these three nations. The initial announcement was made by Trump on Twitter on August 13th, 2020. So he verbally made the announcement on the 13th. In the Illuminati, they always use the number 13 because there's 13 Illuminati families. It's supposed to be a magical number for casting spells and achieving success with demonic spirits. So the two-horned goat of Capricorn, or Saturn, also speaks of the second beast in Revelation 13:11, who has two horns like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. The two horns represent the two-party system of America, but it also represents a church and a state, because the ancient Rome, the imperial Rome, they established their form of government as a church and a state. That was also with the Holy Roman Empire. They had, their government was a republic, a constitutional republic, and it was a church and a state. So the two-horned goat speaks like a dragon because America's government operates in the principles of Freemasonry. The United States of America, I believe, is a repeat of the Holy Roman Empire in these last days. It is the eighth kingdom, the eighth empire in history, described in Revelation 17:11 through 12. In 1945, America became a world superpower under the Yalta Agreement, thus making America the eighth empire in history. Exactly 9 months to the date of when Yah spoke to me about Trump being the rider on the white horse, I was shocked to discover that even believers in Messiah were being fooled into believing that this conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn was the real Star of Bethlehem. So the fact that this was 9 months after Yahuwah showed me who Trump is was also revealing, because you see, in ancient mystery Babylon religion, it is taught that the Queen of Heaven, she's talked about in Jeremiah chapter 7. There's a pagan deity known as the Queen of Heaven. She is also the same character as Ishtar, which in English is Easter. And on the spring equinox, or the vernal equinox, which falls on March 21st, she is supposedly, according to ancient mythology, she is supposedly impregnated by the pagan sun god. Nimrod was supposedly, he was killed, and he was supposedly, the pagan sun deity, and he impregnated his mother/wife. This is according to the esoteric, mystery religions, mystery school religions. The Bible doesn't tell us this, but this is what the ancient mystery school religions teach. I'm not saying that this actually happened historically. What I'm saying is this is what they teach. I'm not saying we agree with them. I'm just saying this is what the occult world teaches. They teach that after Nimrod died, he ascended as the pagan sun god, and that, he married his own wife, Semiramis. She was the Queen of Heaven, and she, he impregnated her with the rays of the sun, and she became pregnant with Tammuz, according to Ezekiel 8:14. So the spring or vernal equinox was on March 21st. That's when it was typically. Now, some years it could fall on March 20th or March 19th, but typically March 21st was the historical date for the vernal equinox, and anciently they celebrated March 21st as the spring equinox, which is exactly 9 months before the winter solstice on March 21st. In esoteric religion, Tammuz is supposedly born or reincarnated on December 25th. He's supposed to be the reincarnation of Nimrod. Now, if you want to learn more, read my other blog called Should You Be Merry About Christ Mass? Now, I also decided to look up what Trump tweeted on March 21st, 2020, and I found that Trump tweeted about hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin taken together. He said they're beneficial for treating COVID. The only problem is that Trump's corporation owns stock in these two drugs. Well, what do you know? Which means that these were a source of profit for him. On that same day, another doctor on Twitter advised strongly against taking these two drugs together. He said that they could lead to heart arrhythmias and sudden death. So here it is. You got March 21st, 2020, Trump giving out advice. He says, taken together, a real chance to be one of the biggest game changers in the history of medicine. He always talks over the top. He says the FDA has moved mountains. Oh, yeah, they've moved people into graves, too. Thank you. He says, hopefully they will both. H works better with A, International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents. This doctor, Edsol Salvana, says, please don't take hydroxychloroquine, Planaquil, with azithromycin for COVID-19 unless your doctor prescribes it. Both drugs affect the QT interval of your heart and can lead to arrhythmias and sudden death, especially if you are taking other meds or have a heart condition. So, yeah, I'm not going to trust the beast with any pharmacia, that's for sure. So he announced this on March 21st, and this other doctor, advised against it on the same day. Now, another thing I found out when I went to antichristcalculator.com, and as I've already said many times before, I use this website because the reason I use it is because it's the only website that I found that uses all 10 methods. Hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, it won't work unless you spell it all out. So hydroxychloroquine, I had this sneaking suspicion. And I thought, I wonder if hydroxychloroquine adds up to 666. I mean, I even thought it before I did it. And when I did it, I was like, yep, same numeric value as Trump's name. President Donald Trump adds up to 666. So I thought, maybe, I don't know. What if, taking hydroxychloroquine, anything's possible. What if there's some property in that drug that also gives you a mark of 666 somehow in your body and your DNA? I wouldn't trust it. So I thought that was really crazy that both hydroxychloroquine, President Donald Trump, and also this other V word, all three of these add up to 666. Okay. So, yeah, stay away from any of that stuff. And then, another thing is all these other characters who were involved, like William Henry Gates, his name adds up to 666 also, Dr. Anthony Fauci. All the people that are involved in this, their names add up to this same number. Now, after looking up the etymology of the word chloro in hydroxychloroquine, I discovered it comes from the Greek word chloros, meaning light green. Chlorine is so named because the gas has a pale green color. The Latin word equinus means of or pertaining to horses. These two words together, chloros, equinus, which is the root for chloroquine, right, bears the meaning of a pale green horse. Isn't that interesting? The pale green horse brings death. Okay, on the 1 year anniversary of the rollout of the V, December 21st, 2021, Trump announced he was going to address the nation again from his Mar-a-Lago estate concerning the January 6th events of 2021. But he canceled at the last minute. He didn't go through with the address. But I suspect that the announcement had some kind of occult meaning behind it, that just the fact that he announced it, that there was something activated in the in the demonic realm. Okay. What I find interesting, though, is that the name Mar-a-Lago is Spanish and it means from sea to lake. Remember, Revelation 13:1 says that the beast rises up from the sea. The word lake, as a verb, according to Merriam-Webster, means to cause blood to undergo a physiological change in which the hemoglobin becomes dissolved in the plasma. So do you remember when Trump tweeted, "My blood is the..." A lot of people saw it. Some people did not. The tweet got taken down. Right after the tweet got taken down, his son, John Jr., made a tweet about it. So this was on October 5th, 2020. Trump tweeted, "My blood is the vaccine." His son, Don Jr., says, "Imagine this. Trump gets all better and donates his plasma to develop a corona treatment, and then all the liberals have to get the V with Trump's blood." Okay. Now that's really crazy. Now I know and then he says down here, OMG, he needs to go donate now. That same week, Tom Hanks says, "Here's last week's bag of plasma." Now there's a real connection here because Gary and I watched the Da Vinci Code during that year of the scamdemic because I knew there was something to it. And come to find out, there's this ancient cult called the Rosicrucians, and they believe that, Jesus, and I say Jesus because that's their version of the Messiah, Jesus, that he got married to Mary Magdalene and they had children. And they believe that the children, the offspring of that union, they call them Merovingians. They're supposedly, they're the Holy Grail. They call the womb of Mary Magdalene the Holy Grail. So the children that come from that offspring are supposed to be the elites, the Illuminati, the enlightened ones. That's what that word means in Latin, the enlightened ones. So it's no coincidence that Trump announced that he was going to be addressing the nation from Mar-a-Lago exactly on the 1-year anniversary of the winter solstice, December 21st, 2020. As I previously mentioned, in the occult world, the winter solstice is considered the most advantageous time of the year to conduct satanic rituals and dark arts. In ancient Babylon, the practice began with sacrificing infants on the altar to Moloch during what is called the rebirth of the sun. It is believed that the sun god dies on December 21st, but he's resurrected 3 days later on the 24th, Christmas Eve, which was previously called by other names such as Saturnalia in ancient Rome. As you carefully examine this graphic, you'll see the pattern from previous Antichrist leaders. And I made this graphic. As you can see, the V is an abomination to the human temple. The first abomination of desolation was in 167 BCE on December 25th, Antiochus Epiphanes IV placed an image of Zeus on the altar of sacrifice. He sacrificed swine's blood. His image was on the temple coin. In fact, he gave himself this title, Epiphania. Epiphanies in Greek means God manifest. It has the numerical value of 666. Nero Caesar in Roman numerals also adds up to 666. President Donald Trump adds up to 666. Vatican adds up to 666. Then there was another abomination of desolation in 70 AD. General Titus came in to Jerusalem with his army. They desecrated the temple. They put up an image of Nero Caesar in the temple. And Nero Caesar claimed to be a reincarnation of quote unquote God on December 25th because, see, Zeus was the same deity as Jupiter, only Zeus is the Greek name and Jupiter is the Roman name. But they were supposedly the same deity. They both claimed to be reincarnated on December 25th. So they erected an image of Jupiter. And, Nero Caesar claimed he was the reincarnation of Jupiter on December 25th. And they did the same thing that Antiochus did. They offered up unclean swine on the altar. Nero Caesar's image was on the coin. And then here I have third abomination of desolation, Operation Warp Speed, President Donald Trump, December 25th, 2020. He calls it the Great Christmas Miracle. You can see the ingredients: human DNA from aborted bambinos, DNA from pig, rabbit, horse, and dog. All of these are in the V. In Leviticus 11, 4 through 47, he says we shall not eat these things. We shouldn't consume them. They shouldn't be in our bodies. These unclean things are an abomination. Carcasses of dead humans, carcasses of dead animals. He says, you shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, neither shall you make yourselves unclean with them, that you should be defiled thereby. For I am Yahuwah your Elohim. The fourth abomination of desolation in the Jerusalem temple, to be built by DT. I believe he will build it. I believe that he will erect an image to the beast. It could be a clone of Jesus. I saw this article back in the year 2000. It was on a website called Christians for Cloning Jesus. So they claim that the Shroud of Turin, the burial cloth, I don't believe that burial cloth is even the legitimate burial cloth, but the Catholic Church claims that that's the same cloth he was buried in. So they claim they extracted the DNA of Jesus from the cloth, and they say that they were able to clone Jesus. And they say on the website that December 25th, 2000, that was the year they cloned Jesus. And by December 25th, 2030, he'll be 30 years old, and he'll be old enough to act as the high priest in the temple. So that remains to be seen. I don't know that we'll even get to that point or not, but we'll see. So if Trump builds the temple, which I believe he will, his image is already on the coin, the temple coin, just like these other Antichrist leaders in the past, right? And Revelation 13, 17 through 18 says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 636. In other words, 666. Now, some people would argue that it can't be the mark because we're still buying and selling, but they've already rolled out passports in other countries where you can't get on an airplane. You can still buy food, but there's certain things you can't buy. Like, you can't go to sports events. You can't go to stadiums to see concerts and things like that. So they're going to slowly roll it out. It's not going to happen. I think a lot of people watch all these Christian movies like the Left Behind series, and they think everything rolls out within a 2-hour period, like in the movie. But in real life, it's not going to be like that. In real life, it's not going to be like a 2-hour long movie and everything happens really fast. Boom, boom, boom. It's not like that. In real life, it rolls out a lot slower. There already are restrictions on buying and selling in certain countries. You can't fly without the V passport. You can't fly an airplane. Some countries you can't go to stadiums. You can't go to sporting events. You can't go to concerts. So they've already started with the restrictions on buying and selling. Just because it hasn't reached its full implementation yet doesn't mean that this is not the mark. It is. I'm certain of it. All the prophetic markers are there. As with all previous Antichrist leaders, December 25th was the date that was chosen to invoke the worship of their pagan gods by offering up children and humans as sacrifices. This is always accompanied by false satanic worship. So unless your eyes are already opened, you would probably not have noticed that Trump rolled out the CV just in time for the satanic holiday, calling it a great Christmas miracle. And as I've already mentioned, this is the same date that Trump was called the most admired man by the Gallup poll. And when you look up that word wondered, where it says, and all the world wandered after the beast whose deadly wound was healed. Well, like I said, that word wound is plague. He recovered quickly from the virus, and it says, and all the world wondered. Well, that word wondered in the Greek is thaumazo, which literally means to be admired. So he was admired. He was voted the most admired man on the same day that he rolled out the V, December 21st, 2020. And in Revelation 13:4, it says, and they worshiped the dragon, The dragon is Satan, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? In other words, who's able to impeach him? Who's able to arrest him? Who's able to put him in jail? Right now, the Trump organization was charged with 17 counts of tax fraud. There's rumors that they're going to indict him. There's rumors that he's going to serve jail time. That might even happen. I don't know. Regardless, it's not going to stick. He's the beast. It's not going to stick. Either he's going to get out of it entirely because he's got so many lawyers that he can hire, so many lawyers at his beck and call, and they're all judges are paid off, lawyers are paid off. He's got enough money that he can, pay all these people off, and he'll bribe people and they'll get him off. That's probably how it's going to pan out for him. Okay. In October of 2020, Trump survived the deadly virus, like I said. And what did he do? He made a cryptic tweet on Twitter about his blood being in the V. So in Revelation 13:14, it says he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles. Well, that was a false miracle. He called it a great Christmas miracle that he made a deadly poison for everybody, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Okay. Well, in the sight of is this Greek word enopion. It means in the presence of, or instead of, or like in proxy of. So now why is that significant? Because see, on May 24th, 2017, Trump had a face-to-face meeting with Pope Francis. And Pope Francis gave him the climate change encyclical. The climate change encyclical basically says our planet is being destroyed because of carbon emissions, and it's the humans that are creating all these carbon footprints. And the only way we can save the planet is we have to kill off a bunch of people. They're the ones that set up the Georgia Guidestones, and now they took them down because everybody's starting to get wise about what's going on. So they took down the Georgia Guidestones. Why are they taking down the Georgia Guidestones? Because it's been done. The deadly poison's been rolled out. So they took those stones down because the deed has been done now. Okay. So, he deceives the whole earth by the means of those false miracles that he did, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. Now, of course, this prophecy has more than one layer of meaning. It's not just limited to one interpretation. Something I've noticed about the word of Yahuwah is, people like to attach just one meaning, but oftentimes with prophecy, there are multiple layers. History repeats itself. There are repeating fulfillments of prophecy. So there's many more applications to this prophecy, but I can also see how it applied to the wound by a sword. Now, as I already said, the wound in this passage is plague. But what does the word sword mean? I looked up the word sword. It means judicial punishment. So he survives a deadly wound by a sword. He already survived 2 impeachments. I believe he will survive these other punishments, these judicial punishments that are being forged against him right now. Okay, so when he survived the CV in October 2020, I smelled a rat. I figured that they were planning some kind of psyop. Psyop means psychological operation that is meant to legitimize his miracle blood transfusion. That would be included in the deadly snake bite. Now, this is interesting. The technology for this quantum dot patch was patterned after the snake fang. Okay, the snake fang is called the Duvernay's gland. Okay, so when I realized that, they patterned this quantum dot chip, which is supposed to, it's going to be used to, identify those who have received the V. I realized that when Trump read that famous snake poem, he was pretending that it was about the immigration, right? And I just thought it was so odd because I'm like, I don't know. I knew there was something cryptic. I knew there was something occult oriented about the snake poem, but I didn't put my finger on it right away. Not until the year of the scamdemic. That's when the lights went on and I said, Oh, that's why he read the poem. Okay. That's when the mask came off, literally speaking. The mask came off, and many of us were made painfully aware of who Trump really is, and that this cryptic snakebite poem was speaking of him. He's the snake who gave the woman, America and the people of the world a deadly bite that would kill them. He was telling us. Now, why do they do these things in plain sight? Why do they tell us these things? Because, see, in the occult world, the Luciferians, they follow the Bible, but in a very twisted way. They believe that Jesus is a reincarnation of Lucifer. And they believe that when Jesus came to earth, and I'm using the name Jesus on purpose because their version of the Messiah is Jesus, who they think is Lucifer reincarnated. And so they believe that he had to go to hell after he died and he had to suffer there as a sinner. And after he suffered and paid for his crimes in hell, that he resurrected, and now they say Lucifer's back on the throne again as God, God. That's what they say. Of course, we know it's a lie, but see, they believe some of the principles in the Bible apply to them. They think that they have to tell us the truth. They believe in the law of reciprocity, the law of, sowing and reaping. So they believe they have to tell us, and if they don't tell us, that they will be held accountable. So they personally tell us in plain sight what they're planning to do. And if we still don't get it, if it goes over our heads, then in their minds, it's like, well, that's on you. You were too stupid to see it. You were too stupid to get it. So, now, the responsibility falls back on you. So that's that. And they gain so much Kabbalah magic power when they do this. That's why they do it. Okay. So, why did both of these events from 2020 and 2021 take place on the winter solstice? And why did Trump choose January 6th in both years to carefully orchestrate these rituals? Well, even though Trump canceled his speech on January 6, 2021, the fact that he made the announcement in the first place was meant to send out a cryptic message. The Illuminati, the global elites, their message is that December 21st, 2020 and December 21st, 2021 were like bookends, like mirror images of something else. Also, January 6th, 2021 and January 6th, 2022 were also mirror images pointing to the same satanic ritual. You see, Trump performs his Kabbalah magic in pairs because he was born under the sign of Gemini, the twins. Like I said, I don't believe in following astrology, but these people in the occult world do follow astrology. So a lot of things that Trump does, he does it in pairs because he's a Gemini. He was born on, June 14th, 1946. Okay. Satanists require the blood of sacrificed infants to perform their sex magic rituals. And we all know that the snake bites contain the blood of sacrificed infants. Therefore, the question we must ask ourselves is, why were the events of January 6, 2021 at the Capitol Dome carefully planned as a Luciferian sex magic ritual? Now, here's a graphic. Dr. Teresa Deischer said this in the year 2020. She says human bambinos born alive at 5-6 months old so that their hearts can be obtained beating, and they have to be beating to be used in the V research that's being done. If the heart has stopped beating, it's not useful. You cannot use it. And so these babies are delivered alive and their hearts cut out without anesthesia. That is the most brutal and horribly satanic thing you can think of. And yet, don't tell me for 1 minute, oh, but Trump doesn't know that. Oh, come on. He doesn't know? Please. He knows very well what's going on. So the ritual that played out in front of our eyes on January 6, 2021 was based on Kabbalah magic, and it is called controlled opposition. It's where they deliberately made Trump look like, what did they make him look like? The persecuted martyr. They tried to make him look like the Messiah. So if you wanted somebody to look like the Messiah in the eyes of the public, how would you do it? You would make him look like the underdog. You see, people love to rally support for a persecuted martyr, for an underdog. On January 6, 2020, Trump was close to invoking the Insurrection Act. There are still conflicting reports as to whether or not he actually did invoke the Insurrection Act. This article tells us about the Insurrection Act of 1807 and what it enables a United States president to do. Here's what the article says. It says, did Trump sign the Insurrection Act? Now, they say no, but other websites say yes. So the jury's still out on that. Now, they say Trump has not signed the Insurrection Act, according to Reuters. But another website says, I have invoked the Insurrection Act of 1807 to address the treasonous rebellion conducted by Democrat and Republican lawmakers, CCP agents, the FBI, DOJ, CIA, and others to undermine, corrode, and dismantle the United States of America and its Constitution. But according to this Reuters article, they say that this was a fake account, that this wasn't the real Donald Trump, that somebody else posted it. But, I don't know. There's no way to know for sure. They said that the account does not appear to be authentic. Okay, so what is the Insurrection Act? Well, the Insurrection Act gives the president the power to deploy the military and federal forces across the United States. It was originally passed in 1807 by Congress. They created the act to allow the president to use U.S. armed troops and federalized National Guard troops inside its own borders. However, it can only be used to suppress revolutions against the government and prevent civil disorder. It has never been imposed in the United States on a nationwide basis. How could the Insurrection Act be invoked? Well, according to this article, it says Mr. Trump has the power to use the Insurrection Act if he attempts to diffuse a rebellion or civil unrest through other means first, and if unsuccessful, a president cannot invoke the Insurrection Act secretly or ambiguously. Before doing so, he must ask the insurgents to disperse and retire peaceably to their abodes within a limited time, so thereby giving the people an opportunity to retreat. He also has to allow Congress and the public to respond to his plans. According to the text of the act, it says it is lawful for the President of the United States to call forth the militia for the purpose of suppressing such an insurrection. See, Trump knew when he tweeted and asked everybody to come to the Capitol Dome on January 6th, he knew that these people were going to do this. See, everything is by design. In the world of politics, nothing happens by accident or by happenstance. President Roosevelt said everything in politics is carefully scripted. You don't think Trump knew that he was going to invite these people to the Capitol Dome? And yes, there was liberals there. Yes, there was conservatives there. They were both there. In fact, I'll go as far as to say maybe some of these people might have even been paid actors to do what they did. It's all carefully scripted, but you have to understand, why would he do this? Why would he sabotage himself and make him look bad? Why would he sabotage his own political career? Stay with me and you'll understand why he did this. Why would Trump allow himself to be so close to enacting an insurrection? Doesn't it seem counterproductive to his political career to be falsely accused of insurrection? Or was it really a false accusation? Could there be a secret magic trick he was performing that most of us did not notice? Can you remember the charges that were brought against our Messiah on the Feast of Passover in Mark's Gospel? You see, since the Luciferians do not honor Passover, they conducted their sex magic ritual on the Roman Catholic Feast of the Epiphany. What is January 6th in the Roman Catholic Church? It's called the Feast of the Epiphany. Remember what I said? This name Epiphany means God manifest. Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth gave himself the title Epiphany, which has the numerical value of 666. So Trump waited for this Roman Catholic feast, the Feast of the Epiphany, to manifest himself as what? God, right? But instead of doing it on Passover, because he's a Luciferian, he did it on his pagan holiday, the Feast of the Epiphany. See, There was another anti-Messiah leader, like I said, Antiochus Epiphanes, who gave himself this title in 167 BC as he erected a statue of who? Zeus. On what date? December 25th in the Jewish temple, claiming to be the manifestation of God, G-O-D. Okay, we don't call our Elohim God. I'm only using the word because this is what the heathens use. Now we have another anti-Messiah leader who is openly claiming to be the manifestation of God. But few people can see it because they lack spiritual discernment. So let's read Mark 15:6. Now at that feast, he released unto them one prisoner, whomsoever they desired. This was Pontius Pilate. Mark 15:7, and there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them, that had made insurrection with him, who had committed murder in the insurrection. Okay, now there were some people killed at the Capitol Dome on January 6th. The Romans allowed Barabbas to go free after being imprisoned for what? Insurrection. Why? Because they falsely accused our Messiah of insurrection. Do you see what was taking place on January 6th? They're trying to make our Messiah, Trump, look like the real Messiah. You see, they're falsely accusing him of insurrection. That's why Trump kind of pushed the envelope. He almost enacted the Insurrection Act, but what did he do? He told all the rioters to go home, which is what it says in the Insurrection Act of 1807, that before the president can call on the military to break up the civil unrest, he has to first tell the people to go home. And that's what he did. Okay? So he came to the brink of almost enacting the insurrection, but he didn't. So what he was doing is he's making himself look like an insurrectionist, but he only went so far so that he can't really be accused of it. Okay? So why did they organize this event on January 6th? As I already said, because in the Roman Catholic Church, January 6th is the Feast of the Epiphany, when who came to visit the Messiah? That's what they say. The Catholic Church says this was the date that the Magi, the word Magi in the Greek comes from the Latin word for magic, magicians, wise men. They visited the Messiah in Bethlehem. So what did Trump do? He invited people to come to the Capitol Dome. The MAGA people. MAGA is just the English word for magic, magi, right? See, he organized the Million MAGA March on January 6th, 2021. Okay, so in the fifth degree of Satanism, you can advance to a level called MAGA. English, or in Latin, it's magus. Remember Simon the sorcerer that Peter rebuked? He's called Simon Magus, Simon the sorcerer. It means magician. And there's a website here. You can go to this link. It's about Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. At the fifth degree, you can reach the level of a MAGA or a magus. So in a televised interview, the spirit cooking witch Marina Abramovich said that Trump is playing the role of the magician in the tarot cards. You can see these links. You can go to the YouTube videos and hear her saying it. So she said that Trump is being used to bring us into a new age of enlightenment, to wake us up. See, the entire Capitol Dome debacle was carefully scripted to make Trump look like the Messiah. Now, this is from the Church of Satan website. It says that a registered member has no degree, an active member, Satanist, first degree, witch or warlock is a second degree, priestess or a priest is a third degree, magistra or magister is the fourth degree, MAGA or magus, fifth degree. Now, I know that they disguised this MAGA to mean Make America Great Again, but do you think that this is by accident? No, it's not. She called him the magician. Okay? By inviting the Magi, fellow magicians, wearing MAGA hats to help him conduct the insurrection, this was a satanic Kabbalah magic ritual as he was rounding up his followers, just like on the night our Messiah was being arrested. The liberal opposition then cried, "Impeach him." This is very similar to "crucify him." Okay? Interestingly, the Greek word for sword in Revelation 13:14, makira, means judicial punishment. And did Trump recover from that deadly wound? Yes, he did. He's wildly popular more than ever. Nobody cares. Okay? Nobody cares about the tax fraud. Nobody cares about the insurrection. Yes, in the media, they're really playing it up. The Democrats are doing this, but it's all scripted because they got to make it look like, oh, isn't that terrible how they're persecuting that poor man? Oh my goodness, isn't it just terrible? They're playing the public. They are manipulating the public with all of this. Okay? It says that the beast survives a deadly wound by a sword and then lives. Okay? 2 impeachment attempts. Right after Trump survived 2 impeachment attempts or judicial punishment on December 8th, 2022, the Trump Corporation was charged by a grand jury of 17 counts of tax fraud. Trump himself is also being threatened with indictment and imprisonment for his involvement in the events of January 6, 2021. He's being accused of inciting rioting and violence from his followers on January 6, 2021. Right after Trump survived those 2 impeachments, what happened? They made an image to the beast. At the CPAC event 2021, they rolled out a golden statue of Trump. Now, of course, this is not the final fulfillment because, they didn't give life to the image, but it's just the whole point that, you can see layers of fulfillment with this prophecy. And look what he's got in his hand. He's got the wand, the magic wand, just like Mickey Mouse. He's performing magic, right? Also, what's interesting is Harry Reid, who was a longtime Democratic member of the Senate, died. He was one of the guys that was instrumental in bringing that impeachment process against Trump. He died on December 28th. Now, it's possible he took the V and dropped dead from that, but I'm also thinking, could that have been a satanic human sacrifice? They're famous for doing that. They know that if they offer a human sacrifice, that they can use the blood of that sacrificed person to gain demonic power. So then on January 6, 2022, Trump was planning another address to the nation on the anniversary of January 6, 2021 at the Capitol Dome, but he never went through with it. He canceled the address at the last minute. Now, I'm going to postulate why I believe Trump made the announcement and didn't follow through. Okay? Well, I believe he did it only because by speaking it out, he was invoking something. I'm not quite sure what he was invoking, but I'm going to show you a picture of 3 domes that are connected on the world map by a giant triangle called ley lines. Ley lines are straight alignments drawn between various historic structures and prominent landmarks. The idea that was developed in the early 20th century Europe with ley line believers arguing that these alignments were recognized by ancient societies that deliberately erected structures along them. Those involved in Freemasonry and Lucifer worship use these ley lines as points of contact to invite demonic entities into their rituals. There's a giant triangle between these 3 domes. These domes represent 3 power structures of the world controlled by the Illuminati. They are the United Kingdom, finance, the Bank of London, the Rothschilds, Washington, D.C., military, the District of Columbia, which is also called the New Rome, the Vatican City, religion, the 7 Hills of Rome. So here is the dome at St. Peter's, Vatican, the St. Paul Dome in London, and this is the U.S. Capitol Dome, Washington, D.C. All 3 of these domes are meant to represent the womb of Isis, the womb of the Queen of Heaven. Okay. In the case of the Rosicrucians, it's the womb of Mary Magdalene, the Holy Grail. Okay. So, all this esoteric, mystery school religions, it goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, but they have different names for it in different cultures. Okay. So at each presidential inauguration, something satanic is taking place in the White House behind the scenes. The Capitol Dome is meant to represent the womb of ISIS, and the U.S. president that is being sworn into office is inside the womb. He's inside the Capitol Dome. It's a mock birth. It is believed that he's being born or reincarnated as the Apollyon from the bottomless pit in Revelation 9:11. This is why I believe they chose 9/11 to destroy the Twin Towers. I believe strongly that Trump was involved in that because, I shared in my other video and blog about the Serta mattress commercials where he has the sheeple standing on the podiums of 9 and 11. And, the Twin Towers, Trump is born under the sign of Gemini, the twins. There's something to that. Everything involved with Trump is all pointing to the fact that they believe he is the chosen one, born in the womb of ISIS. Now, across from the dome, at all these three locations, London, Vatican City, and Washington, D.C., you can see an Egyptian obelisk, which is supposed to be Nimrod's phallus. See, directly across from the womb of ISIS, otherwise known as the Capitol Dome, is the phallus of Nimrod, aka Apollo. The word inaugurate comes from a Latin root word, ogre. Ogre means to cast spells or practice magic or witchcraft. So the presidential inauguration for any president is a sex magic ritual. What these Luciferians are practicing at every presidential inauguration is a satanic ritual meant to bring up the spirit of Osiris, who is also Nimrod, Saturn, Apollo. You see, these are all the same entity, but they have different names. Osiris is Egyptian, Nimrod is Babylonian or Chaldean, Saturn is Roman, Apollo is Greek. They're the same deity, but they just have different names in different cultures. These are all the same entity, but are given different names in different languages and cultures. But we all know who it really is. He is what Revelation 9:11 calls the angel of the bottomless pit. In the Hebrew tongue, he's called Abaddon. And interestingly, if you break up that word Abaddon, it comes out to Abaddon. Abaddon. Now, he is none other than Satan himself, who will possess the man of sin, the son of perdition. 2 Thessalonians 2:3. I highly recommend this film. Gary and I watched it a couple of years ago. It's called Belly of the Beast, and you can find it on Vimeo. At the time, we paid, I think, $14.99 for it. We can access it anytime we want on Vimeo. We own the film. This is where I learned some of this stuff. I already knew a lot of it, but this is where I learned some of it. The part about the inauguration, what happens at the presidential inauguration, that was the part I didn't know before I watched the film 2 years ago. The rest of it I already knew, but, I learned a lot from that film, so I highly recommend it. And I give the link where you can go and watch it. Now, according to Tom Horn, Tom Horn is one of the narrators in the film. He's a researcher, a narrator. He says there are Luciferians conducting satanic prayers during every presidential election. He says they are invoking the demonic spirit of Osiris, which is Egyptian, or Apollo, which is Greek, or Abaddon, which is Hebrew. However, as Tom Horn explained in the film, there's only one last president where this ritual will finally take hold and stick. In other words, all the other presidents, when they conduct the ritual, they know that it might not stick. It might not, adhere to that president because he's not the chosen one. But they say that there's one last president in history where this ritual is going to stick. Okay? He's the chosen one that will embody the spirit of Osiris, the spirit of Apollo, Apollyon. Now, on August 21st, 2019, Trump tweeted bragging that the people in Israel call him the second coming of God. He was bragging that they call him the King of Israel. Okay. Also, the same date, this was right after the whole Russian collusion thing that they brought the Democrats brought against him, and it just totally failed. He announced in the news media and said, I am the chosen one. They had a press conference And he stood outside and stuck his hands up in the air and he says, I'm the chosen one. And of course, he was saying this in regard to China. And at the time, I even defended him and said, oh, that's not what he means. But now I see things differently. Now I recognize he was giving out a cryptic statement. He really is the chosen one that the Illuminati have chosen for this role, the last president, who will become the embodiment of the Osiris, the Apollo, the Abaddon. See, Donald Trump was born on June 14th, 1946. It was on a full moon. It was a total lunar eclipse, which was also a blood red moon. His birth took place exactly 700 days before the modern state of Israel was established on March 14th, 1948. Now, Tim Cohen, the author of the book Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, he says that Prince Charles was born November 14th, 1948, 6 months after Israel became a nation. And he thinks that that's something significant that proves that King Charles is the Antichrist. But you can also take a look at this and say, now, why did they orchestrate the 700 days before the modern state of Israel for the birth of Trump? We see 100 years ago, there was a book written called The Last President by Ingersoll Lockwood. And there are a lot of predictive programming things in that book that talk about a boy named Baron Trump who has a spirit guide named Master Dawn. The boy in the film, his name is Baron Trump, and he builds a time machine. He goes underground to Germany, and then he travels to Russia. And then there's a Russian war that takes place in the book. I mean, it's a piece of fiction, but it's like there's all this eerily similar stuff. It even names the exact address of the Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. It talks about an election with these candidates that have similar names like Biden, and it's just uncanny. But see, I think that what these people did was the global elites, the Illuminati decided we have to choose somebody from this specific bloodline, the Merovingian bloodline that comes from, Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And they told Trump's family, you're going to have a son and he's to be born on this date. You're going to get pregnant on this date. You have to give birth to him on this date. And, they might have even planned a C-section so he would be deliberately born on that date. Who knows how they did it, but they carefully scripted and orchestrated everything, making sure that he was born on a full moon, a blood red moon, a total lunar eclipse. They made sure he was born under those astronomical events. Trump's family lineage on his mother's side can be traced back to the Plantagenet kings of England, as well as a king in Jerusalem, Count of Anjou, from 1131 through 1143. In other words, he's got royal blood. His mother, Marianne MacLeod, she is from Scottish Jewish heritage. And this was confirmed by Yair Davidi. He's a well-known historian and author. He's done a lot of research on where the 12 tribes of Israel were scattered to. On Trump's father's side, they belong to the 13th Illuminati family called the Merovingians. They believe they are the direct descendants of Christ and Mary Magdalene. This is why Trump's father was named Fred Christ Trump. His grandmother was Elizabeth Christ Trump. His grandmother also died on June 6, 1966. In other words, 666. This was the date when Trump inherited his family inheritance of $413 million. Now, this notion of Jesus and Mary Magdalene getting married and bearing children is believed by this Rosicrucian cult. This cult worships the womb of Mary Magdalene. They call it the Holy Grail. They call it that because I know this is going to sound disgusting, and it is disgusting, but I'm just showing you how these people think. They call her womb the Holy Grail because they say Jesus copulated there. So her womb is holy, and the offspring, the children that come from that union are the Holy Grail. So, of course, this is all satanic nonsense. It's a heretical lie, but this is what these aristocratic Illuminati families believe. This was all explained in the film entitled The Da Vinci Code, starring Tom Hanks. This would also explain why Tom Hanks and Trump both donated their blood plasma for research in 2020. This is a huge hint that these guys might very well be Nephilim. They might be passing on their satanic bloodlines to unsuspecting sheeple who willingly take the jabbies. So this is what January 6th was all about. To those who think, oh, that's just terrible, they're falsely accusing him of insurrection. Can you believe those Democrats? Look, you might think that, Trump's the poor victim here. But look, I'm telling you, this is all carefully scripted. This is all being done on purpose to catapult him into power. I believe that on that date, January 6, 2021, Trump was displaying himself to the whole world under the Capitol Dome as the Epiphany. That he was, making himself look like the poor persecuted Messiah. They're falsely accusing me of insurrection. It's all done on purpose. It was carefully planned to be on January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany in the Catholic Church, the Million MAGA March, the magicians, the wise men who came to Bethlehem to visit the Messiah. He invited them, all his followers, the MAGA people, to come visit him at the Capitol Dome. I'm telling you, this is all scripted. And he's not going to be indicted. You know why? Because everybody's in on it. Whether Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. They're all in on it. It's all a game. It's all staged for the public. It's meant to manipulate your emotions. If they indict him, even if they put him in jail, do not be moved by that. They put our Messiah in prison before they crucified him, right? And what happened? He resurrected. Okay? He won. He was victorious. Don't you think the false Messiah will do the same thing? Even if they put him in prison, even if they put him in jail, even if they kill him, don't you think he's going to fake a resurrection, or maybe they have a clone of him? Who knows how they're going to do it? But don't be moved by what you see, because it's all carefully orchestrated. Okay? And that's the end of my discussion on what happened on January 6th, 2021 at the Capitol Dome.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.